Hello, and welcome to this podcast dedicated to the history of France. Today, we will explore one of the longest and most defining conflicts of the medieval era, the 100 Years' War and the decisive role of Joan of Arc. In this episode, you'll discover the stakes, the major battles, and how this war reshaped the future of France. Join us as we delve into this key moment in history. The 100 Years' War, which lasted from 1337 to 1453, originated from a dynastic dispute between France and England. It began in 1328 when the King of France, Charles IV, died without a male heir. According to the Salic law, which excluded women from succession, the crown passed to Philip VI of Valois, a cousin of Charles IV. However, this decision was contested by Edward III, the King of England, who claimed the French throne through his mother, Isabella of France, the daughter of Philip IV. Beyond the succession issue, the war was also a struggle for territorial control. The kings of England held lands in France, notably in the region of Guyenne, and tensions over these territories were frequent. Moreover, the rivalry between the two crowns was fueled by broader political and economic factors, as Europe was undergoing significant changes. The early decades of the war were marked by resounding English victories. At the Battle of Crécy in 1346, the French army, composed mainly of knights, was decimated by English longbowmen, who were armed with a formidable weapon capable of shooting arrows over long distances. This defeat highlighted the tactical weaknesses of French chivalry. 10 years later, at Poitiers in 1356, France suffered another crushing blow. King John II of France was captured by the English. His capture plunged the kingdom into a deep crisis, with growing internal unrest and a weakening of royal authority. The Dauphin, Charles, the future Charles V, attempted to govern in his father's absence, but the situation remained unstable. One of the most iconic battles of the war was the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. King Henry V of England led a vastly outnumbered army against the French. Despite their numerical superiority, the French, disorganized and hampered by muddy conditions, suffered a catastrophic defeat at the hands of English archers. This battle once again demonstrated English tactical superiority and left France devastated. Beyond military defeats, France was plagued by internal crises. The Black Death, which struck Europe in 1347, decimated a large part of the population, further weakening the country. Peasant revolts, such as the Jacquerie in 1358, reflected popular discontent over heavy taxation and the devastation caused by the war. In addition, the civil war between the Armagnacs, supporters of the Dauphin Charles, and the Burgundians, allied with the English, further divided the country. King Charles VI, who suffered from bouts of madness, was unable to effectively govern the kingdom, leaving France in chaos. In 1420, the Treaty of Troyes, signed between the English and the Burgundians, promised the French crown to Henry V of England after the death of Charles VI, threatening the independence of the kingdom. It was in this desperate context that an unexpected figure emerged. Joan of Arc, born in 1412 in Domremy, Joan was a simple peasant girl who claimed to receive divine visions instructing her to liberate France and have Charles VII, the Dauphin, crowned king. In 1429, she convinced Charles to entrust her with an army, despite her young age and lack of military experience. Under Joan's banner, the French army won a decisive victory at the Siege of Orleans, a major turning point in the war. Thanks to her, Charles VII was crowned king in Reims in July 1429, legitimizing his claim to the throne. Joan quickly became a national icon, known as the Maid of Orleans, symbolizing the hope of France's liberation. However, Joan's glory was short-lived. In 1430, she was captured by the Burgundians, allies of the English, near Compiègne. Sold to the English, she was imprisoned in Rouen and put on trial. The trial was presided over by Pierre Cauchon, the Bishop of Beauvais and a staunch supporter of the English, whose goal was to discredit Joan and, by extension, the cause of Charles VII. Accused of heresy, wearing men's clothing, and claiming to hear divine voices, Joan was condemned by an ecclesiastical court dominated by English influence. On May 30, 1431, at the age of 19, she was burned at the stake in Rouen. Her trial was a blatant example of political manipulation. However, in 1456, she was posthumously rehabilitated after a second trial that cleared her of all charges. Despite Joan of Arc's death, the momentum she had given to Charles VII continued. Reorganizing his army and taking advantage of English weaknesses, the King of France gradually reclaimed the lost territories. The Hundred Years' War ended in 1453 after the decisive French victory at the Battle of Castillon. The English, exhausted, were left with only the city of Calais on French soil. This war, though long and devastating, marked the unification of the kingdom and paved the way for the French Renaissance. Thank you for listening to this podcast on the Hundred Years' War and Joan of Arc. If you enjoyed this key moment in history, don't hesitate to subscribe to discover more significant events from the history of France. See you soon for another journey through the centuries.